Hello there, many thanks for joining us on this edition of Business Week, the program that brings you top business stories that made the headlines during the course of this week, including special news features, market data, interviews, and much more. Welcome to the show. Well, here's the highlight of the biggest stories we tracked for you over the course of this week. On the local front, the federal government has opened an auction offering for a combined sum of 150 billion naira in bonds through the local debt market to meet its funding needs. And telecommunication switching services suffered a 91.83% decline from 182,958 subscribers recorded in the year 2020 to 14,947 subscribers last year. And within the energy sector, Nigeria's 3 refineries recorded a combined operational deficit of 11.77 billion naira in the months of June, July and August last year. And I'll bring you the latest from the international front. Glencore has sold out of Rosneft, capping 2 decades of investments, which saw the Swiss commodities firm trading millions of barrels of the Russian group's oil, even as it witnesses some of Russia's top corporate and political battles. And still staying with energy, Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has also transferred 4% of Saudi Aramco shares worth $80 billion to the kingdom's sovereign wealth fund. European banks are also providing billions of dollars of funding to expand oil and gas production, despite the International Energy Agency guidance against new facilities in order to slow global warming. Well, on that note, it's now time to bring you special packages prepared by our correspondents. Now in this first report, the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission has signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, the NERC, on just how consumers can better get value for their money. The agency expects this to also result in better protection of the rights of the average Nigerian as well as electricity consumers across the country. Lara Folayo reports.
Electricity consumers in Nigeria have continued to grapple with some challenges, which include billing, metering, and transformer-related problems, despite having poor power supply. The country's power sector regulators have also had to contend with consumers who try to bypass the electricity payment system through illegal connections, amongst other sharp practices. The Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission has tried to constructively engage the two parties through town hall meetings, particularly to ensure consumer interests are protected. It has now moved a step further by signing this Memorandum of Understanding with the Electricity Regulating Agency towards greater protection of consumer interests.
The more we resolve complaints, the more there are complaints, and that's good and bad. That people are complaining a lot more now is actually an indication of a vibrant resolution mechanism and confidence in that mechanism. However, that's the good side. The bad side is that we still continue to have repeated complaints about the same issues. Shows that there are some key structural modifications to how the businesses operate and how the sector delivers its services.
The agreement also includes electricity consumers knowing and insisting on their rights while helping the operators deliver better services.
We have worked collaboratively, worked very closely with FCCPC in the area of consumer protection. So what we had today, signing of the MOU, has been to consolidate this area of cooperation between our two agencies. When you have two agencies in charge of consumer protection and so on, the usual attitude would be to be competing against each other. We have decided to collaborate for the same purpose of protecting consumers.
Well, I think the consumers can expect at a minimum that they've got two regulators in the space who are truly committed to resolving their complaints, but beyond resolving their complaints, modifying the nature of business in that space to a point where the dissatisfaction is reduced.
The Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission and the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission have been working together over the last 2 years in areas of consumer protection. This renewed collaboration between the two agencies is to prevent them from working at cross purposes.
And now in this next report, ease of doing business can only be enjoyed by compliant traders. This assertion was made by the Comptroller, Apapa Customs Command, which was in response to allegations of delays caused by physical examination of cargoes in the ports. The issue of recurring export infractions and why exporters are not complying with the guidelines were also highlighted. TVC News correspondent Ifeanyi Eze reports.
The manual process of cargo examination in Nigeria's ports has continuously thrown up arguments about issues of delays in the cargo clearance processes. Some have argued that the manual procedure is frustrating trade.
When you insist on 100% custom examination, we're talking about even manual custom examination in this instance. You can do that. You're talking of, if it's container, you are talking of thousands and thousands of containers.
But the Nigeria Customs Service insists that national security supersedes every other consideration.
If we cannot examine a container 100%, we just allow the container pass through the system seamlessly. The insecurity that will happen in this country, you could remember, we have a lot of seizures on arms and ammunition, we have seizures on cocaine. In this country, we don't have high compliance level. Therefore, the need for physical examination is paramount. And it's not going to be compromised for any reason. We cannot compromise physical examination at the deterrent of the security of the nation.
He contends that installation of scanners in the ports will not stop physical examination of certain importation.
Even when scanners are brought in, physical examination is going to be there because there is going to be suspect. Everything that is suspected by the image analyst is going to be dropped for physical examination. It will be examined.
What about export guidelines? There are arguments about knowledge gaps in that area being the major reason for most of the export infractions.
We have a lot of things in Nigeria that can go out of Nigeria, out of this country. We have a lot of fruits. All we need is the mechanism and the equipment, storage equipment, to put all these things to order, so that Nigerians who have interest, who have so much interest in exporting one or two things, will engage themselves. 50% of people that wants to export doesn't know what is good or what is not good to go. So these are the things that have to make more, so that people can easily do their things and the possible give them the guide.
In the case of export, we have Schedule 6 with about 8 items. So those items are very clear.
He knows that export prohibition is part of government's drive to protect local industries.
It's about that time now when we bring you the feature on the show today as we take a look at matters arising following the back and forth between the Debt Management Office and the report from the International Monetary Fund over the state of the Nigerian economy. Don't go anywhere. And thank you very much for still staying with us. Let's now deal with the crux of today's discourse. There have been mixed reactions and many more following the Debt Management Office's faulting of the projection of the International Monetary Fund that Nigeria must spend 92.6% of its revenue on debt servicing this year. The Debt Management Agency said the federal government is already implementing policies towards increasing revenue generation and developing infrastructure through public-private partnership agreements. However, according to the IMF, the federal government's debt is expected to grow up to 70.85 trillion naira this year, 83.17 trillion naira in 2023, 97.8 trillion naira in 2024, 115.38 trillion naira in 2025, and 136.11 trillion naira in 2026. Within the period under review, the Washington-based lender also projects that government spending will rise by 69.91% from 17.24 trillion naira in 2022 to 29.29 trillion naira in 2026. It also projects recurrent expenditure will account for most of government spending, rising to 13.59 trillion naira in 2022 and even reach the height of 24.12 trillion naira later in 2026, while capital expenditure will account for a fraction of the spending, accounted for 3.65 trillion naira in 2022 and later jump to 5.18 trillion naira in 2026. Well, joining me now for more on this, I have economist Adeola Ojo. Thank you very much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you so much, sir.
Now, what do you make of the Debt Management Office's stance and then its faulting of the projection of the International Monetary Fund that Nigeria has spent about 92.6% of its revenue on debt servicing this year alone? This has generated a whole lot of reaction, even as we see Augusto and Co., a credit rating agency, also forecasting that the figure will be seen, it will be around 90%. Do you think government's body language is mimicking one that does not understand the implication of our debt levels, or it is a situation whereby borrowings and the debt state is sacrosanct?
Basically, I would say that it is not that the federal government of Nigeria and the Debt Management Office does not know that it is a thing. We're actually getting beyond what is the normal. They know that already, and I think even from last year, various economists and various analysts have actually come out to let the country know that we are getting to a precipice, a situation whereby we are likely to have a debt overhang or debt issue going forward. So we have said that last year, and indeed, even part of the thing that was mentioned was that the way we are going, there are going to be challenges. So it's a thing that the federal government of Nigeria and the DMO actually knows. So what IMF is retreating is what is already in the public domain. And I believe that Augusto and Co. also gave that credence. So when you are speaking from 2 or 3 areas, especially on a particular matter, in a way, there's likely to be a level of truth. So I believe that the federal government of Nigeria should actually take a cue rather than come out here to come and be denying what is the obvious. Because what we have now is obvious, and they know that where we are going is not actually a way we should go.
From the part of government at this point in time, do you think we can really exempt the level of borrowing we've seen so far in terms of trying to understand the impact of COVID-19, the nation having gone through recession in 2020, and also the government doing just more to ensure that it props up itself much more stronger? Look at how much we're also spending on security. Do you think with all of these indices playing out, we can forgive the government and say, well, these borrowings, irrespective of how huge they seem to be, are necessary?
No, because basically this spending actually started since year 2016, even before COVID came into being. They started this issue of taking loan upon loan to finance. It has been in place. And the first reason then was that the Jonathan government actually left the country in a situation that is challenging, a comatose situation. So they are coming on to actually use the money to finance. Yes, after the recession of 2016, one of the things we actually projected then was that federal government should actually get some money to finance the economy for us to be able to have a rebound. But since then, instead of just getting the money to do the refinance that was being suggested, they went beyond board. And since that time now, they have been taking loan without let or hindrance. And even the loan they are taking actually has been beyond measure. So from my own point of view, sir, I think they're actually going beyond the bar.
Okay, now. Well, government also prides itself in utilizing more of the borrowings for infrastructure development as a means to eventually lead to revenue generation. In terms of exploring the capital market more for funding, we've seen the likes of Infraco, and we also have to still look at other alternative measures. Do you think we are doing enough? Plus, the ratio of capital to recurrent expenditure in our budgeting over the years, it doesn't paint a picture, or it's not convincing enough to show that we're serious. The state of our refineries are poor. Fuel subsidy is still gulping even much more funds. We're looking at an extension of 18 months so far. One more time, how do we begin to generate more, thinking outside the box? And for those who are also saying government really needs to revisit its agenda of propelling the non-oil sector, how do you think would have a stronger mix, especially for a new government coming into bear in the year 2023? What would be your expectation?
Yeah, I think I'll start from the last part, because basically the current government have not been able to manage the economy well. And indeed, all the challenges we've seen actually exacerbated the issues of economic management. Because from the time they came in, when we have about 18 trillion as our $18 billion actually as our debt, we actually grew it to what it is now, currently $97 billion, or let me just say 34 or 38 trillion as we are currently have it. And they still want to spend in the next couple of years another 34 trillion. in the next 5 years. So invariably, any government that is going to come in 2023 is going to come to meet a bigger challenge than the current government actually met when they came in 2015, because they have not done well with the economy. In a way, let me just use a one-word language, they have bastardized the economy. So I believe that going forward, especially for the new government, there is a need for them to actually come over and start from the trench, look at what some people have actually put in place. I know there has been some works that have been done, even from 2016. I know they have done a lot of economic reviews, economic policies, economic suggestions, even from IMF, from World Bank, even from all the other finance companies within Nigeria and outside the country. We should look at what they have actually projected on ground. Yes, oil sector have not been able to help us. And indeed, we need to get out of that sector, that aspect. Because if something is giving you 90% at the beginning and you rely on it, and now it's giving you less than 10%, then I think it is good for us to consider the other one, especially when you look at the Pareto optimality part, 18-20 principle. So we should try and, as much as possible, and look at those ones that are giving us 80%, 90%, and try to grow them.
Let's now look at things from a conservative standpoint. If we were to measure likely best and worst case scenarios, do you think these figures we are having from the IMF will tally with our reality from this year to 2026, when the new government would have begun fresh administration? The IMF says that government debt is expected to grow to 70.85 trillion naira this year and then hit as much as 136.11 trillion naira in 2026.
From my point of view, I think they are actually giving us an idea that is realistic, because we actually projected this also the last time and last year. For example, as we currently have, as at third quarter of September 30, 2021, the debt of Nigeria, public debt, is actually 38 trillion, which is in a way $92 billion. But when the IMF was computing it, by the time they look at the ways and means from the CBN, we actually came to about $118 billion that we are owing as a government. So if we are currently, as at third quarter of last year, owing 38 trillion, by the time you actually begin to calculate all the expenditure of government directly and indirectly, that is why they are looking at the issue of 70 trillion this year. So our government, that is the reason why we are all shouting, because government still have that penchant. Yes, our revenue is low, but the issue is the way and manner we are expending. It is not sustainable. And from the plan that we already have in place, like you have just suggested, you just mentioned, sir, we are going to be having a minimum of 12 trillion expenditure every year, because the projection was at 18 trillion this year, and by 2026, we are going to have 29 trillion expenditure of government. And out of it, our revenue has not increased. It's still roving around 6 to 7 trillion naira every year. So the remaining 12 trillion, 15 or 17 trillion or 19 trillion are going to come from the deficit financing. So you are going to actually have that. So except we decide to diversify, except we're going to have massive agriculture, except we're going to go again into mining, except we're going to just look at other measures through which we can raise revenue. Yes, one of the measures that was raised, the other that was tax, ICT. They have started doing that. That's why Google and Co. Taxation actually come into being. So invariably, there is going to be this. But I believe that if government can take the idea of reasoning, they can help to reduce this burden. And we can also help. This country has potential to grow. But the first thing is for us to go back, apart from whatever agriculture, we should go into massive industrialization, so that we can actually then increase our tariff compliance and tariff, because that's sort of part of this. They said we should increase because majorly now the path through which government can raise revenue is to increase taxation, increase VAT, like you have suggested, then rationalize those who they have currently been given tax rebates, that is tax holiday. They should make sure that everybody pays taxes as it should. Those who have not been paying should pay, and those who have been given tax holidays, the time is now right for them to be reviewed so that everybody can get to pay. But the question is, who will pay? Because you pay tax from your productive process. If there's no production, then there's no taxation. So government should encourage that aspect.
Okay, well, the debt to GDP ratio is also expected to increase in the medium term to 43% of the GDP. Tax to GDP ratio, one of the lowest in the world. We know how that plays out. But is it enough to just increase taxes, or is this... Because at the end of the day, we have to put things in perspective. These are the same Nigerians who can barely feed that will be taxed. Interest to revenue ratio is also expected to slightly decline to at about 86%. From what we also saw in 2021, hitting as much as 139% in 2026. How do you see things playing out?
I understand very well. Because, like I said earlier, if there's no production, there's no productive process. It is, sorry sir, if in every sense, if you're asking me to give you a 10 naira or 1 naira out of my 10 naira or out of my 100 naira, I know that, oh, I can make way, I can give you 10 naira out of my 100 naira. Or out of my 10 naira revenue. But when I do not have to, when I couldn't even make 10 naira or make even 2 naira, and you're asking me to pay 1 naira, there's going to be some challenges. I cannot feed, I cannot live well, I have to finance everything that has to be financeable. Please permit my use of English. You get me? I have to finance everything that needs to be financed. I finance my transportation, I finance my accommodation, I finance my medical care, I finance home, education, everything that has to be financed, we have to provide it for ourselves. And government is still saying, and the revenue is not coming, income is not coming, salaries are not increasing, things are not even paid as at when due. So most people, like we already have, they're living below poverty level. So where will they get the money to pay the tax? So that's the reason why we need to get the government and the people, because basically look at the investment sector of the economy that we have. Government savings have been negative for 5 years. The only investment that we have in the economy is from the private sector. And indeed, if only government can give the enabling environment, that is the area of their policies and provision, give enabling environment to them, and there is production. We have the people, we have the population that can consume. The moment they begin to consume, and those organizations or those industries begin to make profit, they pay you from there. That is where America is having its money. They give an opportunity to its people to be able to be productive. They have market for them. And at the end, when they realize and they make money, even when you are not, when you're outside America, you are expected to pay back money, your tax into you file your returns at the end of the year back to America. We cannot do that here, and we have not been able to do that here. Why? Because our government have failed in its responsibility to the people.
Wrapping up our conversation, by the end of next month, we also expect to now start having conversation about how well did the 2021 budget implementation fare. However, the biggest issue in terms of our assessment is the transparency marker. Corruption has always been on the tail of each administration, and now we are having the Buhari administration preparing for a wrap-up for the second term. Now, do you think the noise of corruption can really be silenced, and what will be the cost here?
Corruption started from the point of the preparation of the budget. As you already know, one, I tried as much as possible to see how much comes to my ministry or department for the next particular year. And the thing is that I put in projects that are not expected to even be, just for me to be able to have extra funds to fleece. And that has been a major issue over time. And that is the reason why we have duplication of projects all over. By the time the necessary bodies also that were supposed to measure to look at the way the budget is, when it's presented and it comes to them, sometimes they talk, or most times they also look for what is in it for us, and which was also visible last December, when they had to add a number of account or number of amounts into the already prepared budget to be able to satisfy their constituency projects, which the president has actually called on them to remove, which is still calling on them to remove. So invariably, from the preparation to the area of the procedure of looking at it, even to the area of signing, and to the area of even releasing, because also before you release, let us be factual, they don't get to release everything that has been budgeted, but they release to some critical sectors, and sometimes they also release based on the issue of what comes back to them. So corruption has been in the process, and that's the reason why we'll give a project for, let's say, $2 billion or 2 billion naira, And at the end, only 1.1 billion will be expended on that project. The remaining 1 billion is gone. And that's the reason you could see, even of recent, in the last 1 week, been a story of an officer of the government who had been able to amass a property worth 10 billion. One man. How did he get all this thing done? It was still in the same system where we have a single treasury account. How did that money come out from? How did they get out? How did they fall through? So we have this process in place. And from Transparency International, they said last year, 44% actually said the corruption has increased in the last 1 year. Another organization, who is the independent organization in government, went to check on our budget implementation process. And they found that some of the projects that we said we are implementing, and already what we said we are implementing, they found out that those projects were either 20% done, and they said it's already 100% completed. Even the person that was supposed to monitor and confirm and report back will say it is done. So they do not allow transparency so that we will not ask questions. They will not allow transparency so that things that they want to hide will be hidden. Even if we collect 100 billion, 100 trillion dollar loan today, we will not see the effect, which has been the issue in this country, because what is meant for all is being taken and being used by a few. And until we're able to change that, the economy will not be better for it.
Thank you so much for your time on the show today. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Well, just before we go now, here are graphic details of Nigeria's January inflation report as prepared by the National Bureau of Statistics. And on that note, that's it in this edition of Business Week. Many thanks for watching so far. Do enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm David Alabi. Bye for now.